Now let us proceed to the discussion about the archipelagic waters. The basis for analysis is the Lost Convention, which contains certain provisions related to archipelagic states. Article 8 provides that where establishment of a state baseline in accordance with the method set forth in Article 7 has the effect of enclosing as internal waters which had not previously been considered as such, a right of innocent passage as provided in this convention shall exist in those waters. Take note that only an archipelagic state may draw archipelagic baselines as provided in Article 47, which sets out criteria to which an archipelagic state must adhere when establishing its archipelagic baseline. The key concept of archipelagic waters is a group of islands in mid-ocean. Here, mid-ocean archipelago should be considered as forming a unit, and that the waters, this one, enclosed by baselines. So these blue lines on the outer side, these are called the baselines. Joining the outermost points of the archipelago should be under the territory or the territorial sovereignty. The Republic of the Philippines is an archipelagic state located in Southeast Asia in the Western Pacific Ocean between the Philippine Sea and the South China Sea, east of Vietnam, north of Malaysia and Indonesia, and south of Taiwan. The Lost Convention further reflects the specific rights and duties given to archipelagic states over their land and water territory. Article 53 allows the archipelagic state to designate sea lanes suitable for the continuous and expeditious passage of foreign ships through its archipelagic waters and the adjacent territorial sea. Also, Article 53 provides that if an archipelagic state does not designate sea lanes, the right of archipelagic sea lanes passage may be exercised through the routes normally used for international navigation. The position of the Philippine government is that all waters around, between, and connecting the different islands of the Philippines, irrespective of their width or dimensions, are subject to the exclusive sovereignty of the Philippines, being necessarily appurtenances of its land territory, and an integral part of its internal waters as provided in Article 1 of the 1987 Constitution. This provision was seen as posing a problem for Philippine law because Article 1 of the Philippine Constitution, which took effect in 1973 prior to the 1982 Convention on the Law of the Sea, considers all waters connecting the islands as internal waters. The Philippine government was clearly aware of this possible conflict. Hence, upon ratification of the Convention of the Law of the Sea on August 5, 1984, it added the following declaration: that first, the signing of the Convention by the Government of the Republic of the Philippines shall not in any manner impair or prejudice the sovereign rights of the Republic of the Philippines under and arising from the Constitution of the Philippines. And second, that such signing shall not in any manner affect the sovereign rights of the Republic of the Philippines as successor to the United States of America under and arising out of the Treaty of Paris between Spain and the United States of America of December 10, 1988, and the Treaty of Washington between the United States of America and Great Britain of January 2, 1930. And that such signing shall not diminish or in any manner affect the rights and obligations of the contracting parties under the Mutual Defense Treaty between the Philippines and the United States of America of August 30, 1951, and its related interpretative instruments, nor those under any pertinent bilateral or multilateral treaty or agreement to which the Philippines is a party. Also, the provisions of the Convention of Archipelagic Passage through sea lanes do not nullify or impair the sovereignty of the Philippines as an archipelagic state over the sea lanes and do not deprive it of authority to enact legislation to protect its sovereignty, independence, and security. For its final declaration, the concept of archipelagic waters is similar to the concept of internal waters under the Constitution of the Philippines and removes straits connecting these waters with the economic zone or high sea from the rights of foreign vessels to transit passage for international navigation. However, concern about this problem may not be necessary because Article 8 itself says that the new rule applies only to areas which had not previously been considered as internal waters. The 1973 Constitution predates the 1982 Convention. Further, in the Philippine legislation, no distinction is made between internal waters and archipelagic waters. From a domestic standpoint, the waters enclosed by the Philippines Strait baselines are treated as internal waters. As such, the Philippines asserts full sovereignty over these waters. And since in international law, the legal regime of internal waters is no different from the regime of land territory, this has serious consequences for navigation, passage, and access to resources in these waters. Now let us proceed with Philippine Baselines Law. On March 2009, President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo signed a new law adjusting the Philippines archipelagic baselines. Baselines are actually lines on a map here, okay, identified by coordinates from which is measured the 12-mile territorial sea, where according to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, a coastal state or an archipelagic state like Philippines has sovereignty. The UNCLOS provides for a contiguous zone with a maximum breadth of 24 miles from the baselines, where the coastal or archipelagic state enforces its custom, fiscal, immigration, or sanitary laws and regulations. States also have an exclusive economic zone measured up to 200 miles from the baselines where they have sovereign rights to explore, exploit, conserve, and manage the natural resources in the waters and on and beneath the seabed. Let us see the case of Magallana versus Ermita, GR number 187167, August 16, 2011. The facts of the case we have here: the Congress passed RA 3046 in 1961, demarcating the maritime baselines of the Philippines as an archipelagic state. This is pursuant to the framing of the Convention of the Territorial Sea and the Contiguous Zone in 1958, UNCLOS 1 and UNCLOS 2. RA 5446 was passed later on to correct the typo errors under RA 3046 and included reserving the drawing of baselines around Sabah in North Borneo. In March 2009, Congress amended RA 3046 by enacting RA 9522 to make RA 3046 compliant with the terms of the UNCLOS 3, which the Philippines ratified. The requirements complied with are to shorten one baseline to optimize the location of some base points and classify the Kalayaan Island Group or KIG and Scarborough Shoal as regime of islands. The petitioner now assails the constitutionality of the law for three main reasons. First, it reduces the Philippine Maritime Territory under Article 1. Second, it opens the country's waters to innocent and sea lanes passages, hence undermining our sovereignty and security. And third, this treating KIG and Scarborough as regime of islands would weaken our claim over those territories, thus may not only result in the loss of a large maritime area but also prejudices the livelihood of subsistence fishermen. Issue: whether or not the Republic Act 9522 is unconstitutional as it reduces the Philippine Maritime Territory. Ruling: no. UNCLOS 3 has nothing to do with acquisition or loss of the territory. It is just a codified norm that regulates the conduct of states. RA 9522 is a baseline law to mark out base points along coasts, serving as geographic starting points. Also, it includes provisions that enforce our claims to the KIG, Scarborough Shoal, and Sabah. Therefore, RA 9522 is not unconstitutional. Hence, the petition was dismissed. The enactment of UNCLOS 3 compliant baselines law for the Philippine archipelago and adjacent areas, as embodied in RA 9522, allows an internationally recognized delimitation of the breadth of the Philippines' maritime zones and continental shelf. RA 9522 is therefore a most vital step on the part of the Philippines in safeguarding its maritime zones consistent with the Constitution and our national interest. Now let us discuss more about bays. The waters of a bay are considered internal waters of a coastal state. The rule on bays is found in Article 10 of the 1982 Laws Convention. Article 10 of Laws Convention provides that a bay is a well-marked indentation whose penetration in such proportion to the width of its mouth as to contain landlocked waters and constitute more than a mere curvature of the coast. An indentation shall not, however, be regarded as a bay unless its area is as large as or larger than that of the semicircle whose diameter is a line drawn across the mouth of that indentation. So this is the semicircle. For the purpose of measurement, the area of an indentation is that lying between the low water mark around the shore of the indentation in a line joining the water mark of its natural entrance points, where, because of the presence of islands, an indentation has more than one mouth. The semicircle shall be drawn in a line as long as the sum total of the lengths of the lines across the different mouths. Islands within an indentation shall be included as if they were part of the water area of the indentation. Now, if the distance between the low water marks of the natural entrance points of a bay does not exceed 24 nautical miles, a closing line may be drawn between these two low water marks, and the water enclosed thereby shall be considered as internal waters. However, where the distance between the low water marks of the natural entrance points of a bay exceeds 24 nautical miles, a straight baseline of 24 nautical miles shall be drawn within the bay in such a manner as to enclose the maximum area of the water that is passable with a line of that length. It is important to note that the foregoing provisions do not apply to so-called historic bays or in any case where the system of straight baselines provided for in Article 7 is applied. Historic bays are bays which are treated by the coastal state as internal waters on the basis of historic rights acknowledged by other states. A listing of historic bays may be found in 4 Whitman Digest of International Law 233-239, 1965. Here's an interesting question. Are the waters of a bay which is regarded as historic bay part of the territorial sea, or are they assimilated to internal waters? This question is very important for different rules govern the two parts of the sea, particularly as regards one point of vital interest in international law, the innocent passage of foreign vessels. As a general rule, states are not bound under international law to allow such passage in internal waters.